also has to do with this. Let us introduce Martín González. He is a civil engineer and a hydraulic engineer as well. He also has an MBA degree and over 20 years worth of experience as a leader of infrastructure projects for the sectors of energy, mining, and agriculture. So what happened during his life? During the pandemic, he discovered the world of blockchain. And that changed his life forever, because thanks to this discovery during the COVID pandemic, right now he is the head of energy, mining, and sustainability in Just Token. And what he does is he applies technology to connect the real world with digital solutions. So he's here. So let's have a round of applause for Martín González. One of his statements is the best way to predict the future is by creating it. Welcome.
¿Cómo están? Hace frío, ¿no? Bueno, yo no les vengo a hablar de...
I'm not here to talk about yields or agronomic recipes. I am not here to talk about innovation from the farm gate inwards, because I'm sure that you've heard very good speakers talk about that. What I would like to talk about is about something that farmers do not know, which is how commodities are getting reformed. Because we are talking about products that bear identity, traceability, and history. Let us take wine as an example. Wine started out as a bulk product, a product without a face, a highly segmented product where a bottle of wine can be worth $2 up to $2,000. So the wine that we're buying is not just the value of the product itself, but also the origin of the product. And please remember that word, origin. And in agriculture, we are entering into the decommodification of agriculture, but not because of marketing, but because of three factors: regulatory compliance, regulations, and market access. So the first question that I would like to share with you is, are we sure as farmers that the plots that we are planting are complying with what the big exporting companies require? So this leads me to talk about the Argentinian paradox. Argentina is a leader in technology from the farm gate inwards. No-till is one such example. But from the gate outwards, we still operate like 30 years ago. There's so much red tape, there are so many forms to fill, and so on. The thing is that we invest a lot to produce more and better, but we invest almost nothing to show how we did it. And this is very important nowadays. So this creates a perfect storm, which is the consumer has changed. And let's not think about the consumers that are sitting in this room. Let's think about the consumers that live in the places where we sell our products, abroad, in Asia, Europe, the US, etc. And how did these consumers change? Nowadays, it's not enough for a product to be delicious and cheap for the consumer. Now the consumer asks who produces that food, how, and where. And this pressure on the consumer side goes from the supermarket shelf up until the farm to fork. Like, for example, in the EU, the demand at the level of the shelf leads the EU to listen to the population's demands and, as a result, regulate the products that are admitted into the EU. There is a regulation, for example, for zero deforestation in the EU, which determines that products such as soybeans should not come from farms that used to be forests before 2020. So the consumer carries this pressure over to the government regulates, and pressure is, as a result, apart to retailers and to exporters. So at the same time, importers transfer these companies to the traders, to the exporters, and the exporting companies transfer the problem to us. Like, for example, this soybean that will be sold in Europe or elsewhere, for that matter, Where was it planted? Was there deforestation going on before planting it? Is it close to a school, etc.? And what we can see in very, very light gray, it's not happening just yet, but these demands are going to apply to the seed. Where did the seed multiply? Where was it planted? What is the genetic origin of that seed? That is what people will ask. Regulations are becoming more and more stringent nowadays. Like, for example, we have EUDR, which is a zero deforestation regulation for farms. It applies to soybeans and other products, but probably in the future it will apply to corn, wheat, etc. But we also have 2BS, HACCP, RenovaBio, etc., and also sustainability certifications that the traders themselves are adopting as part of their own culture. And well, the big traders, Cargill, Bunge, etc., are not certifying just because it's not it's not on a whim that they are doing it. Like in the case of EUDR, if one of these traders exports or imports food into the EU by, for example, falsifying information, they may lose up to 4% of their annual sales. Apart from that, they may be excluded from requests for proposals, they may be banned from trading, and so on. This applies to exports into Europe, for example, but there are other places as well that have regulations. But there are other companies that you can see here which are adapting DSF protocols. That is to say, these are targets that establish the creation of a supply chain for soybean and corn that is free of deforestation and conversion. So starting next year, few people know this, no farm will be bought any soybean or corn if it is not deforestation and conversion free. So it's not that companies are buying grains, just grains. They are buying the grains with evidence, legit grains. And, well, there is a value for transparency that is bearing, that has a weight in the picture. So what are traders doing or seeing now? Like there are deforestation areas, conservation areas, protected areas, schools, First Nation populations, and so on. And there we have a zoom into the zona núcleo of Argentina. This is the Pampas, Córdoba, Santa Fe, Buenos Aires. And what you can see in pink or in purple, that is deforestation. These are deforested areas. This is an image that was taken last week. So you can see pixels of 3 meters by 3 meters because you can see everything at a very precise level of detail. A couple of months ago, the EU for EUDR established that Argentina has an intermediate risk. Same thing for Brazil, which is quite unfair because Brazil has a lot more deforestation going on in Argentina because of how they cut the trees in the Amazon forest and in the Mato Grosso. Uruguay has a low risk. It's been favored, but well, tough luck for Argentina. Now, what we can see in red is the protected or the conservation areas where you cannot grow any corn or soybean. But just to give you a small detail, in this zoomed-in image, this sort of red tank is the basin of the Salado River. The thing with the Salado River basin is that it is considered an avian corridor, that is to say, a corridor where birds travel and migrate. So, although the legislation in Argentina does not consider it as an avian corridor, as some international organizations do consider it an avian corridor, traders, to avoid all types of risks, so to avoid a loss of sales, are not buying from a number of farms on the basin. just in case. Unfortunately, it's happening nowadays. Then what about schools? Even though this is not binding for many traders, they have mapped all the schools across Argentina, so they have safety buffers of up to 3 kilometers away from the school or around the school. There's this example of a farm that had a school nearby, and the trader said, okay, well, this school, it's a school that is abandoned. There are no students at the school. But the EU answered, well, yes, but according to the Ministry of Education, the school is active. It is functioning. So the school is there. It's functioning according to the EU. And, with regard to First Nations or indigenous communities, that's not such a big problem in Argentina, but it is in Brazil. So let us take a look at one farm. This is a farm in Carrilobo, Córdoba, a 200-hectare farm. We can see the yellow image right there. It is not in a protected area. It is not in a conservation area. Check. There is no indigenous communities nearby. Check. But the company says it does not meet the deforestation and school regulations or conditions. So it is not eligible for EU DR because it's deforested. And what you can say that this farm is divided into 5 plots. The European regulation establishes or speaks about a production unit, not a fiscal unit. That is to say that the language they use is the plot, not the farm. But the traders, except for just one, do not have the technology to divide the farms into plots, so they take the farms as a whole. So as plot 5 is the only deforested one, as they work on a farm basis, the entire farm is left out of the picture. If they worked on a plot basis, they could allow lots 1 to 4 to export. But as plot 5 has a problem, the farm is taken as a whole. The same happens for 2BSVS. Again, there is a deforestation going on before 2020. It is allowed by UDR, but it is not allowed by 2BSVS.
Bueno, acá hay
why there's no deforestation compliance. Well, there you see the affected areas. It has 2.25 hectares that had been deforested in plots 4 and 5, and the schools to the right is non-binding. So what are traders looking at today? They are looking from the sky and they are sorting us out and filtering us. And our plots have already some compliance, although we have not been formed yet. So how does this affect us farmers? In this image, these are plots in green and plots in red. This is in Santa Fe. The green plots comply with EPA regulations. In red, they do not comply with EPA compliance. So it's no minor challenge. This is going on right here, close by. In Argentina, 70% of the fields are rented. So today, it's not enough to check whether the plot is good enough to see the future yield. We need to know if it was deforested before or after 2020, if we need to know if there are schools, originary peoples, nearby wetlands, because if the plot does not comply, because it's not mine, I don't know the history of the plot. If it's a protected area or a biological corridor, if that's the case, I'm not going to be able to sell in other markets, and many times I do not know. And what today is a market banning, tomorrow it can cost my business. So this is a soybean field with an eucalyptus forest. Would we deforest these trees? Would we do this knowing that we would ruin future exports? Would we rent this field without knowing whether it complies with the regulations or not? So this brings about a decommoditization, because when you assess the commodity, because to see if we comply or not. And then they do the traceability with a blockchain technology, which is open source, which is the motto of the Congress. What truck it was loaded off, to what silo did it go, and then which train did it was taken from, which was the carrier that took it, what harbor it reached in Thailand, and what about the contract. All that is traceable information. So when you trace a commodity, it's a commodity that has acquired more value because it's more information related. And it has high yield, the same, both plots have high yield, but one has compliance and the other one not. So plot A will have global access to the world with short-term higher prices, and the other one with lower prices. It's the same grain, but with a different plot history and different yield. So to wrap up, do we know what we are renting as farmers? Because there's something I'm interested in for you to take away. The quality matters, but the regulatory aspect will add to the value of the plot. This is something that is going to happen. So the market, all traders are looking at us, and they are not asking us. They sort us out without our knowledge. So we are growing or farming, but we are looking. We are being looked at from the United States and Europe. Thank you.